Hi everybody, it's Russ. Welcome to My Hammers 11. Today I am joined by a man who many of you will recognise his face. Many of you, hopefully more, recognise his voice. He's the he's the West Ham matchday announcer and also the voiceover for many of the West Ham end of season reviews. It's Martin Godleman. Martin, how are you?
Thank you for having me on, Russ.
It seems like ages since we've last seen each other.
Well, here we are in our respective bedrooms.
Well, my daughter's bedroom, but yeah.
Your daughter's bedroom. Yes, I was going to say there are some things in there that would suggest maybe it wasn't yours. But
Exactly.
but yes, it's these are strange times, aren't they? Very strange.
They are indeed. How long have we been working together, Martin? I can't remember.
You and I have been working together. You joined after I left as PA announcer first time round, so you would have joined about 2008. I'm thinking. So you?
No, actually, it's a bit earlier because I was before. I sort of came.
Oh, you went with Jeremy. You did.
Yeah. So we was. I think it's about 2002 is when we had the Rio stand.
But why did they get rid of you when Jeremy went?
Who knows? This is a different time. But anyway, so
sorry,
we've been together for a long time.
Sorry, I'm digressing. But yes, you and I have worked together, interestingly enough, since October 2013. And so it's coming up for 7 years. And I've actually been at the club. I first worked for the club from August 1991. So next year it will be 30 years. And I've supported them since August 1970. So we're coming up to 50 years of going to see West Ham games. So someone who's seen a lot of West Ham, that's what I you. I don't know if that's good.
You get less for murder these days, don't you? So yeah. Brilliant.
Let you out because they can't afford to keep you in the jail where you might die.
At the moment, yeah. I've got a great picture of you and me from I think it's the first game at the London Stadium. Simon Green took us. So if I find it, I'll whack it on.
Yes, I think you've shown me. I think that is.
Yeah, it's really funny. Really funny. But anyway, me and Martin worked for since 2000, and that's why I asked Martin because I know he'd know because Martin has, in my opinion, the most encyclopedic knowledge of West Ham. Often we were having our sort of pre-match meetings and we'd be interviewing a player half-time, and Martin would know exactly the goal to find on YouTube. Yep, he scored his second against Coventry in 1973. It came in the left top corner, and so I thought it'd be really good to get Martin on. As you said, he's 50 years man and boy supporting West Ham. So premise of this is really simple. It's to find out about your Hammers 11. The first thing we have to do is prove your West Ham credentials. I know you've been around for supporting the team for 50 years, but just a few questions. It'd be interesting to know your answers. A bit like immigration, a bit like the sort of the UK immigration sort of survey.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, and then we can crack on and go on to your West Ham 11.
Okay.
So the first question we ask all of our guests is, what was your earliest West Ham memory?
My earliest West Ham memory, it became a West Ham memory. It didn't start off as a West Ham memory. It was my fascination with Martin Peters,
sure,
who obviously, very sadly, we just lost. Although at least he never had to have anything to do with this bloody virus.
True, yeah.
But Martin was playing for West Ham. He joined early in the 60s, and he got into the team just after the European Cup Winners' Cup win, and was looking around that time. And he actually played a lot of games before. He missed out on some of the big ones, which saddened me a little bit. But I saw him playing for England, obviously in the 1966 World Cup. I was only 8, but the thing I loved about him was this enigmatic thing. His nickname at the club was Ghost, because he used to come from nowhere. If you look at his England goals against West Germany in the 66 final and in the 1970 quarter-final in Mexico, both of them are almost identical. He arrives late at the far post, just where the chance comes. You know, how often do we these days look and think, I was looking at the... what was it? It was the Arsenal game, our last game before all this happened, where Antonio breaks down the right, and Ala is so keen to be the guy laying on a plate, but he forgets that key thing, which is about the timing of the run, and he overruns it, and the ball goes behind him. Now that was an absolute goal, and actually, I don't know, Antonio maybe should have shot, but anyway, so that's Martin Peters. He would have timed his run perfectly. He'd have slotted that ball in, and it would have been 1-0 to West Ham at the Emirates. But so I saw him do that, and I saw him score these goals, and so I understood very early on as an 8-year-old. I didn't know anything about football, but I knew what a ghost was, and I knew that someone in the side who could appear unmarked, or I wouldn't have had the word unmarked, obviously, but that could appear out of nowhere. I mean, he did it. He scored headers like that as well. You'd think, oh, we've missed the chance, and there he is, bang, far post. So he did it in defence. He'd be the last man in defence, goalie beaten, and who's on the line? Peters. What are you doing here? You should be up. You see, that's the kind of player he was. But I was only seeing him playing for England. I didn't know anything about West Ham. Now, my first name is Martin, so you know what kids are like. The whole world rotates around them. So, Uncle Martin, hooray, he's my player. I want it, you know. I didn't talk like that as an 8-year-old. I probably did talk like that as an 8-year-old. I was so excited about things. You're excited about everything, aren't you? When
you are, of course you are.
Remember everything. So, I really thought this is my player. And then, of course, the World Cup's over. Okay, we won it. Great. Well, what happens after? You know, Dad, what happens after? Oh, well, I'll take you to Chelsea. Does Martin Peters play for Chelsea, Dad? No. What's that got to do with it? Don't want to go. I'll take you to QPR, just down the road. Has Martin Peters ever played for QPR? No. What's that got to do with it? What does Martin Peters play for, Dad? I don't know. West Ham, I think. West Ham? Who's that? Oh, East London. Yeah, you don't want to worry about that. Of course, when your dad says you don't want to worry about that.
Yeah.
So, of course, I started finding out about it. And it was what, you know, those days, you'd have 2 or 3 matches at the weekend. You wouldn't have this kind of absolute saturation we have now. We see everything. And every now and again, they would pick a West Ham game. And they tended to pick when West Ham were playing another attacking side, because we were attacking side then.
Yeah.
So you always see loads of goals. And that, of course, was what it wasn't called the big match then, I don't know what it was called, but the ITV version and the BBC version was Match of the Day. It used to be on BBC Two to start with. So we had to go down the road to my aunt's because we didn't have BBC Two.
BBC Two.
But I'd go there to see it. And one day, there it is, Martin Peters. And he scored. It wasn't just like I watched them. He scored a goal. Of course he scored, because I know he's a great player. I really like him. So you start thinking, maybe there's more to this football thing than just one player. And so I started, obviously I'm not reading newspapers, but I'd nick my dad's paper or I talk at school about it. And everyone's, because I lived in Ealing when I was a kid.
Yep.
And so Chelsea and QPR were the teams, so why my dad wanted to take me there. And anyway, so I when I actually went to my senior school, my secondary school, I was 11. It was me and Tim Cotsford were the only. Sorry, Tim, mention you by name. No, that's a bad thing for you. We were the only 2 West Ham fans in a year of 120. I've got to say, I kind of left a little bit of detail there. I said to Dad, "Can I go to West Ham, Dad? What do you want to go there for? Can we go when Chelsea play him?" "Oh, I don't know." And Chelsea, he was never free when Chelsea played West Ham. So
yeah.
And he wouldn't let me go. "That's too far, son. You can't go there." He actually was a dad from the future. Because, you know, in those days, you know, if you were 6 and you wanted to go to football, Dad would go, "Yeah, all right, here's the money, go on." But I was like 8, 9, 10, 11. And Dad said, right, because my dad was very one for targets. And he said, when you go to big school, secondary school, you can go to football. You can go and see him.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward. And he told me this in January. So it's like telling Sam Allardyce he's sacked in January. The team don't play for him then up until May, do they? But that's a little hint of something later. But so I knew I could. I was so excited about it. And West Ham played Spurs on the telly on the big match and beat them 2-0. I remember this. Martin Peters scored. It might have been Jeff Hurst scored the other one. I'm so looking forward to this. The new fixture list came out, and somehow I missed a story, and you'll know what that story is. And because, you know, when you I mean, kids these days, they know everything because they got the internet. But in those days, you didn't have the same saturation of information. So I somehow missed a very important event, which I'm sure you know if you know West Ham, around about March 1970. Anyway, my mate was a Spurs fan, and the first game of the season is Spurs v West Ham. This is the first game I can go to, my first West Ham game. So I'm so excited about it, and also excited because I'm going with my mate. My dad was, it was my mate lived in Ealing, so he obviously felt a little bit happier that two of us were going. Anyway, we get there, and I'm so looking forward to seeing Martin Peters. And my mate said, "Why would you want to go to see Martin Peters?" And I said, "Well, he's Ghost. Martin Peters. Alf Ramsey said he's a player 10 years ahead of his time." And my mate broke it gently to me. He said, he plays for Spurs, don't you? And I said, "Shut up," or the words to that.
Yeah.
He went, "No, he plays." Nick Gibbs was my mate name. Well done, Nick. Hope you're there. And I said, I didn't believe him. We bought the program, opened the program. There he is, playing for Spurs. How have I missed that story? This is my favourite. See, I must have just missed him on the telly or something. I don't know what. Anyway, so I got to see my favourite player, but he's playing for Spurs. So then on the way home, we're on the train, and my mate says, so you're a Spurs fan, are you?" And here comes the moment that everybody has. Team or player. In fact, not everyone do that. They normally just come straight to the team. But for me, I came to football through this one player.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got to let you go, Martin. I don't want to. You're still the greatest player, I think. But it's got to be the team. Especially as West Ham had played really well that day. And guess who debuted? Well, they hadn't debuted for them, but it was the first time he played against his old side, Jimmy Greaves, and he scored. So I thought Jimmy Greaves was like a decent second
string.
So that was how I became a West Ham fan. And after that, of course, there's no looking back. And it does, people. I remember a guy at school who was a Watford fan, and he changed to QPR, and everybody lost respect for him after that, because however rubbish your team is, that's your team. You don't change. And I've never, one guy when Twitter started this rant. I don't know if it was Twitter, but it was early in the days of mobiles. Started this rant against me. He's really a Chelsea fan. I'd gone onto the Chelsea website, and had to join so I could get my dad a ticket. My dad, he only lived for another 2 years, so I'm glad I didn't get too wound up about it. So I was a member of the Chelsea, whatever it is you have to do to get tickets.
Yeah.
This guy has found me on the internet, and he started this campaign. How it worked. This is actually pre-Twitter. It must have been 2003, 2004. But he just, whatever the way of getting stuff out there was, he started saying what kind of, he's an idiot. He's a Chelsea fan. So I did finally get my moment when I very politely told him that my dad, who had since died, I kind of using your death as bonus points for me. He wouldn't have minded. He'd laugh. I said I bought it for my dad, who I wanted to take, and actually it was the last game we went to. I lied, actually. I took him to West Ham after that, but it was the last Chelsea game I went to.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mic drop moment.
Didn't apologise. He just disappeared and stopped aggro. But there you are.
Well,
anyway, that's how I came to West Ham.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think we'll put you through immigration. I think you're okay, Martin.
This is not prepared. I keep it on my desk, actually. That is the game. Tottenham Hotspur versus West Ham United, Saturday the 15th of August 1970. And let me show you the moment that I must have seen that. My mate must have gone, Martin Peters. So there you are. A bit of illustration for you there.
Very good. Okay, doke. Right, you're through. You're through, Martin. You're a West Ham aficionado. There was no doubt, but it was really interesting to know how it all started for you, because obviously everyone has their different stories, don't they, of how they come into falling in love with their club. Right. Okay, let's crack on with your 11 now. There's three rules. One is 4-4-2, no fancy Dan, wing back formations. 4-4-2. The second rule is you must have been alive to see them play. So obviously for me, I couldn't put in Bobby or Martin Peters because I wasn't live. I could put in Samasi Abu and Titi Kamara, but not Bobby and Martin, for example. And the last rule is it doesn't have to be your best 11. It could be your favourite 11. 11 players that had a special place in your heart, who might not have been the best players on the pitch, but they were special to you. So
I can put Alan McKnight in goal then, can I?
You can,
what?
You can do whatever you want with Alan. It's up to you. So we'll
Alan,
start.
by the way.
So let's start. Come on then, Martin. Who we got between the sticks for the Godleman 11?
Do you know what, Russ? Right up until this morning, because Russ told me about this, I had a while to prepare. Right up until this morning, I had Lucas Fabianski in between the sticks. And I knew what the issue was. It's going to be Fabianski or Parksy. And in the end, I'm sorry, Fabs. I mean, and it's not because of the 2 goals at Anfield. Nothing to do with that at all. I think Fabianski, I'm pretty sure, I mean, modern fans will correct me. I don't recall him making an error of that magnitude in any other game. I think he was incredibly unlucky to have made 2 mistakes like that in one game. I want to talk about Fabianski a little bit because he's my second choice and he's really close. I also felt in this weird way you do when you sit down to do things like this.
Yeah.
I've got to have a modern day player. Otherwise they'll think, oh, he's always talking about the old days. And of course, that's so much fitter. And then in the end, I thought about your brief again and I thought, no. And I'm sorry, Fabianski is possibly technically the best goalkeeper we've ever had. But how can you leave Parksy out? For goodness sake. I mean, I've had the great pleasure many times to meet Phil Parks, and he is such a nice guy. I worked with him on a QPR DVD I did for the 75-76 season.
Yep.
This is a guy who played, if you think about it broadly, I'm not talking about Walsall or Ipswich, who I know he played for as well, but he played for West Ham United and QPR. Both of their best ever seasons, QPR 75-76, West Ham 85-86, their best league seasons, he was the man in goal. Yeah. Coincidence? I don't think so. He left QPR, my mate who's a QPR fan always tells me this, and the following season QPR had their worst defensive number of goals they conceded for something like 15 years, and West Ham had their best. So that, the stats keep on coming. Yeah. Commanded his area, very confident. That you'd never get George Best might have done it if he'd been around, but they were different eras. But you never got a striker hanging around him when he got the ball. Mm. The striker just ran up there. He said, "I'm not going to take this guy on." Massive, great guy, and a lovely guy, and a guy who everybody who I've ever met, every West Ham United player of that era will pick Parksy, and we'll talk about him, and we'll talk about, say, you just talk to Tony Cottee about Parksy, and he'll sit there all day talking about him. And the game they always talk about is the West Brom game, which I think was the 3rd round of the FA Cup in, I don't know if it's the 75 or it's got to be the 81, hasn't it? We drew 1-1, and I think it was Tony Cottee who told me, I didn't see the game, that we got absolutely caned, and the only reason we didn't lose that game was Phil Parks. Now, as you know, of course, we won the FA Cup that year. Now, that was the very, very first game we played in that competition. The competition we won, we're the last side outside of the top league to win the FA Cup. Still, that's a fantastic record.
It is. Yeah, it is. I don't think people realise that.
I mean, we're talking 40 years, that is. Yeah. God, poor West Ham fan. So Parksy, that season was just... And actually, all that time later, when he was playing in 85-86, no wonder we were such a great side, because there's that thing about fear. West Ham United have had it, with no disrespect to anyone here. This season, we've had issues with the goalkeeper. Rob Pritchard and I were talking about, did we know another season ever where 4 different goalkeepers had started games for West Ham in the same season? Of course, Pritchard managed to think of one when 5 did, but he's even more stout than I am. But this season, more than any other season, should concentrate people's brains on why somebody like Phil Parkes was he was there, and you didn't have to worry about the goalkeeper. And he was tall, he was agile, he was powerful, he knew when to come off his line, he knew when to stay on the line for crosses. He was a brilliant Bostik hat.
Yeah.
Bostik, by the way, was an old adhesive company. I don't know if it exists anymore. He'd have his Phil Parkes gloves, which he made a few bob out of, I dare say, and so he would. Anyone think, oh, Phil Parkes wears those, I'll buy a pair of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Just wonderful goalkeeper, and not too many mistakes in his career. Phil Parkes will tell you what his mistakes were.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I did that, and he said, "Shut up, Parksy. You're worth so much more." And also a commanding presence in the area. The first of the really tall goalkeepers, I think, really, as you think of him.
Yeah, good point.
Although, interestingly enough, there was another Phil Parkes who played for Wolves, not as a good a goalkeeper, but not a bad one, who was also very tall and also had this mullet. What is it about Phil Parkes and the mullet?
Oh, anyway, bless him.
Yeah, so Parkes.
Good start.
Me.
Parkes is in.
But I would have picked Fabianski if you were going like absolute. I mean, Fabianski playing in a not great team. No disrespect. Look at him, how he kept Swansea up.
Yeah, exactly.
A one-man team.
Yeah.
Parksy nearly always, pretty much always played in good West Ham sides. And that's important to remember, because would he have been as great a goalkeeper in a side that wasn't so good? Well, yeah, the focus maybe would have been more on him, but he always played in a good side. And I think that's an important thing to say. But notwithstanding that, Parkes, head and shoulders.
Okay, Parkes is in. Parkes has got the 1 jersey. Right, okay. So, who we got for left back?
For left back, not even a doubt about this one. Frank Lampard. I don't really want to call him Frank Lampard Senior and Junior, but Frank Lampard. Frank, who never had a nose job, and I think good for him. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of people whose noses have defined their careers, like Serge Gainsbourg, for example, who's got a nose that kind of goes out almost like on a head shape ahead of it. Frank's wasn't that bad, but he was. It's funny seeing him clean shaven, because you think, I looked at some of the early pictures of him, clean shaven and actually quite short hair. The minute long hair came out, he didn't look back. It was always long hair, and his beard. There was one team, and there's a Ray Winston story about Bill Green, Billy Bonds, Frank Lampard, 4 of them there, all with these heavy beards, and you had Graham Paddon as well. And he said they were like Vikings. They'd run out of defence like charge, and that's. So you think of Frank Lampard like that, but I think of him in a game we needed to win against Manchester United, would have been to stay up, would have probably been 70s, and he hit this shot from 35 yards, and as he hit it, you're in goal.
Yeah.
and the keeper's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's going in.
I'm not getting my shorts dirty for that. So yeah, the power of the shot. Fantastic, and he did a ball out of nothing. He did them that would curl away, that would curl in. He was very close to Bonds. He had this thing with Bonds, and it was like Bonds had another version of himself over on that side. Because of course Bonds started out as a right back. One has to remember. Moved later on into centre defence, then he went into midfield. So Lampard fashioned in Bonds' image, Bonds in Lampard's. I'm not quite sure which one came first, but. Lampard and West Ham through and through and through and through, and kind of did the assistant manager thing with Harry, and Harry Redknapp when Harry wasn't there. Frank took over, so one has to say he's done the management thing in a kind of assistant role. I call that. You'll see why that's important later on. And yeah, crunching tackles. And you just sort of, I mean, Bonzo was pretty crunching, but Lampard, no prisoners, no prisoners.
Good.
So so the speed, control, anticipation. Can see him as well. You get that picture of Bobby Moore on the post later on when Morrow left. You think of Lampard on the post with his hand there. Of course, the famous story that his son always talks about, where he scores with the lowest header, and he was perhaps 6 inches off the ground when he headed it to get us through the semi-finals against Everton in 1980. And he does that little run around the corner flag.
Corner flag, yeah. Okay, nice. Okay, Frank's in. All right, so Frank Lampard, senior. The left, who are we going to have on the right back position there, Martin?
Is there any doubt? If Bonzo had spent the whole of his career at right back, then he would have walked it. But of course he moved. And in came, eventually, the Tonka, Ray Stewart. Greatest penalty taker ever for West Ham, with all due respect to Mark Noble, who has a fantastic goal to shot ratio for his penalties, I know. But Ray Stewart, I mean, also Jeff Hurst, but Jeff Hurst just hit it straight down the middle. Bang! Yeah. The keeper's trying to get out of the way. But Ray Stewart, again, no nonsense player.
Yep.
And also an elegant player. He wasn't a thug. He was a real. You think, oh, that can work with the Scotsman? He was a gentleman, and he looked the part. When you see the guy in a suit, he just, he's just a proper bloke.
Yeah, nice guy.
Fantastic. And again, scored some great goals. Most of them were penalties, but he did score a few long shots, and I think a couple from corners. Again, there's always a memory per player, isn't there? And Stewart's one, that's going to be the quarterfinal against Aston Villa, where we get this slightly dodgy pen, although I would give it a pen. I'm sure VAR would have done. And he's got to take this pen. And there's not going to be much left of the game after. So what pressure on? What absolute pressure on this guy? Bang! Why did anyone doubt him?
Doubt it,
But he has spoken about it, and I know he said the worst thing was knowing, he said, catching the sight of people out of the corner of his eye who weren't looking. That's really, you don't want to see that. But he managed that single-minded thing, and great penalty taker. So, and also great. Imagine Frank Lampard and Ray Stewart. Wow.
God, yeah, it's very. You wouldn't want to be a winger, and then going through and coming out with Phil Parks after that. Right. Okay. So we've got Ray on the right back. Okay. Who we've got? Who are your colossals in defence, Martin? Who are your two centre backs?
For his role in the 85-86 side, for his hat-trick against Newcastle in 1986, I think it was, early 86. And for the fact that I think he's probably the nicest bloke I've ever met who played for West Ham, Alvin Martin. What, again, another gentleman, kind, lovely man, and yet no nonsense. You didn't get much change out of him in a challenge. Brilliant in the air. Timing of the jump. You'd see him go up with some of those thugs that you had in the 80s. He'll go up with them, and you'd think, oh, he's going to get a bruising. Very few people got the better of him. They just get to the. And the other thing he did, that thing that that players do sometimes when they go up and duck their head at the last minute, so the other guy gets it in the face, and he runs. These little clever tricks that I think were born out of the 80s, although people will tell you that they were done before that. But scored a few goals and scored this marvellous hat-trick against 3 different keepers. Everyone knows that story. But also was nice to see him this season when his son played at Chelsea and see the two of them.
Yeah, lovely.
And, there was not a dry eye in that stadium.
No, it was lovely.
It was lovely. And I've met his son who adores him, and who wouldn't? Imagine having that guy as the dad. He's a great bloke himself, David. But what a lovely man, tall and a great captain. Very important to remember that. Billy Bonds did not play a single game in the 85-86 season. Martin really had to step up, and he did. He stepped up, and he carried that for the whole of the season. Didn't have someone like Bonds behind him.
No.
He was the leader, and he did it. He carried it off. We were so close to winning that season. You know, some fabulous performances. But yeah, Alvin Martin.
And who's your other? Who's your partner in the centre backs?
I wonder who the other one will be. There are probably West Ham fans out there with guns going, "You better get this right." Well, of course, it's got to be Bobby Moore. Yeah, it seems whatever I'm going to say is going to be a cliche because it's been said 100 times before. There's a lovely game West Ham play. They beat Spurs 2-0. Bobby Moore picks the ball up in defence. I love this thing that people just stood aside for him. I mean, later in his career they didn't, but he hit this pass. You know, it's the passes as much as anything that Trevor Brooking then cuts inside and scores. It's one of my favourite West Ham goals, actually. 72, 73. We won the game 2-0 anyway, so people can see that one. It's worth looking up on YouTube. And so many goals, so much West Ham action from that time. You know, where they cut the goal, they've obviously got to start with a little bit before. Always starts with Morrow in defence with the ball, because it's his pass that starts the move that makes the goal. How many goals? The thing, you don't get an assist if it's your pass that starts the move, unless your pass gets straight to the striker. I'd give the assist to the piece of skill that created the opening, which isn't always the pass. That's a little bit of controversy, but it was a nice idea. And Morrow, oh God, it was like, I mean, in many ways, it's a bit unfair to him because he just was the bloke. There was nobody to challenge him, so you almost didn't think about him. I mean, that was the excitement. I didn't mention that earlier with Martin Peters, but when I found out that Bobby Moore played for West Ham and Geoff Hurst played for West Ham, because again, as a young kid, you don't necessarily get these things. No. That kind of also tipped the balance a little bit. And I was very, very lucky to see Bobby Moore play for West Ham for 5 seasons. Okay, the latter part of his career. But there was something about, I mean, it is a mystery to me why we didn't win more with those 3 players. Brian Deere says that it's because they got picked every week, so they didn't have to fight for their place. And I said to him, well, yeah, maybe, but we're talking about Martin Deere, Geoff Hurst, and Bobby Moore. What's Ron Green we're going to do? Drop them just because it might be a good idea. I say that. I think Moore was dropped after the Blackpool FA Cup game. This is what I mean, what you were saying earlier about these facts coming to your head.
This is why Martin's on the channel, because a lot of people have not remembered or not even known. So it's always great.
They weren't even born then. But Greenwood did drop Moore because of the Blackpool nightclub fiasco. And the worst thing about that was that Clyde Best got dropped. And he only drank orange juice. He didn't even have a drink. But he still got dropped because he'd gone out with them, which was so unfair. But Bobby Moore, I did have the absolute and utter privilege of working at West Ham for 1 year when he was there. Yeah. He worked for Capital Gold, and Jonathan Pearce was the commentator, and Bobby Moore was the what do they call it?
The ex-pro, wasn't he? He was like
But the summariser. They're called summarisers. And of course, you know, you turn around and say, well, Bob, the guy, whatever he says, if he says, you know, you got a bit of porridge on your beard there, Jonathan, it would be, wow, do you know Bobby Moore? But it was an utter shame that he was ignored by so many people, such in the latter years of his life, when this is one of the greatest footballers that ever walked the earth. Very modest man. I maybe got him a cup of tea, or he got me a cup of tea a couple of times, because you're all in this very small press room, nothing like the one they have today, the one at Upton Park. And a thoroughly nice, decent bloke with no side to him at all, just a decent bloke. So the full packet, Bobby Moore makes up. So we We got Ray Stewart, Alvin Martin, Bobby Moore, Frank Lampard. Who's going to argue with that?
Exactly. That's quite a strong back four. And 5 with Parksy
behind you.
I know. God Christ. I'd be sorry I was playing up front. Okay, right. Let's go to your midfield then. Let's go to your left wing then, Martin. Who have we got on the left wing for the Godleman 11?
Again, not a massive surprise here. I grew up in Ealing. So did he. Alan Devonshire.
Yeah.
Who West Ham bought from Southall for £5,000. Now, I've got to say, a bloke gave me a quote for doing 2 walls in a room for £5,000 this week. I was just thinking about that. So you could get 2 walls done for that. That's all you can get these days. I have to say that. I thought it was a bit of a ludicrous quote. I've since got it done for £1,000, by the way.
It's better say, yeah.
Which is a lot better. It is including rendering and all that other thing. Didn't think you were going to hear about that. Didn't hear the word rendering or damp proofing was going to come up with. But Devs signed in '76, £5,000, and he's got a fantastic middle name. Do you know Alan Devonshire's middle name? Ernest. Because that's what he is.
Yeah,
that's him all over, and he was given that in his first few months of his life. Do you know what Jermaine Defoe's middle name is?
Oh, I did remember. Go on, you tell me, Martin. You'll know.
Colin. Sorry, Jermaine. A lot of respect for the guy, Jermaine Defoe, OBE, one has to say. But yeah, Colin. I was going to say, what's your middle name, Russ? But I won't. That's for you and your God. Okay. So yeah, I lived in Ealing. So Alan Devonshire, when he talks about his youth, I kind of connect with him on that. But this guy, he would take the ball past players like they weren't there. You want to go on YouTube and see his goal in the semi-final. It's actually the same game where Frank Lampard scores the goal 3 inches off the ground.
Yep.
Devs takes this ball and it's the change of pace and doing something unexpected, and also doing the bleeding obvious, which a lot of players don't do at the key time. Sometimes the obvious thing is the one thing they're not expecting.
Very true. Yeah.
It was about him. He seemed to be able to anticipate what to do in a situation. And the only thing that sickens me, and everyone will know I'm talking about who knows Alan Devonshire, is him getting injured. I mean, okay, Andy Carroll, well, that's another story, and injuries and all the other people we've had. But it actually was a crime against humanity that Alan Devonshire did not play subsequent seasons, because this was one of the greatest players ever. And the only reason, played for England, it was an absolute shoe-in when he was fit. And we haven't had many players who are that good. But yeah, acceleration, the unpredictability. He had a shot on him. Look at the goal he scores against Chelsea in 1980. It must have been 86 when we win 4-0 at Stamford Bridge. Pretty sure that's him. A thumping goal. Yes, it is. Why am I doubting myself here?
Why are you doubting yourself, Martin?
Yes. So Premier League could do it from distance, and also he was a goal maker, but he was also a goal scorer. And if your goal maker can score as well, my goodness me, absolutely. So yeah, Dev's, wonderful, fabulous player. And of course, in the 85-86 season, he did some things. And we had Alan Dickens as well then, who was another great midfielder. Didn't have very many good, many good seasons. He didn't have many seasons, Alan Dickens, but also a fabulous player. But Alan Devonshire, wonderful. What a buy, eh? From South.
But also everyone speaks. I mean, you interview the players at halftime, and everyone always speaks so highly of Dev. And it's been picked up on a few videos. And when someone does that, same with Ray Stewart, everyone speaks so highly of Ray Stewart and stuff, and Parksy. There's a reason why these players, the fans adore them, because the players themselves adored them, and obviously Dev, as you said, everyone speaks so highly of him to a man when you interview him, particularly 86 boys. Okay, Dev's on the left. Okay, who we got on the right wing then?
I might get a kick in for this one. I know that West Ham fans may not be keen about this, but I'm picking Frank Lampard Jr. And I'm picking him because of his whole career, which also might not be right, because he was an emerging star before he left to go to Chelsea. And I know he's a pet hate for West Ham fans. And I have to say, I was one of the ones cheering when he got sent off playing for Chelsea against West Ham. You may remember that game. I think the red card was rescinded later on. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I think it was.
But it was one of the loudest cheers I've ever heard at West Ham, was Lamb's getting sent off. And, of course, there I was cheering as well. But he was part of that side that should have won something, the 98, 99, 2000 side. He was part of that team that beat Bradford 5-4, which remains it is my favourite West Ham game. And I know people will go, surely the Eintracht Frankfurt. But no, that 5-4 game, because I was lucky enough to be behind the mic, and also Sky used my commentary, so I must have got something right. They didn't get it revoiced. And that's the only game ever they stuck my commentary. But Frank Lampard, him arguing with Paolo Di Canio over who's going to take hilarious. I mean, who picks a fight with Di Canio? But he was just raw talent. And a famous West Ham evening meal where Lampard and can't remember who else was there, Harry Redknapp, and Peter Storey was probably there. He was at most of those. I don't know if he was around then. He might have gone. But somebody in the crowd said, "Yeah, Harry, why do you keep picking Lampard?" You know, blah, blah, blah. And I think Lampard's there actually sitting there. I might be remembering that wrong, but I think the guy obviously had some bit shirt to do that. And Harry Redknapp leaned forward and said, "I'm going to say something to you now, and it's not just because he's here. This boy will go straight to the top, right to the top, I promise." And there was a sort of feeling in the room like, wow, that's a big thing to say.
Yeah, big statement.
And I think he's also his nephew. I don't know if there's some kind of... And people naturally, people being people, think there's a bit of nepotism going on here. But even if there was a thing that got him there, fantastic, wonderful, wonderful player. A shot on him like you wouldn't believe. Much more so at West Ham. At Chelsea, he tended to see himself more as a creator, although he eclipsed. I think he ended up scoring more goals than Bobby Tambling, which is something. But a wonderful player. And you don't want to get Paul Ince about it, but I understand why fans feel the way they do about him. But then that was a lot to do with how he saw his dad as having been treated by West Ham. So I think it's not a straightforward, and whether or not he's right, that's another story. But Frank Lampard Jr., as he threw off in his second season, that was a good decision. You ask kids today, Frank Lampard, even West Ham fans will think Frank Lampard Chelsea. And that's sad for me because Frank Lampard dad. But I love the idea also of the two of them in the same side.
Team. Yeah. God, dear. That'd be brilliant.
My man there.
No props. Right. And then who we got in the centre midfield player positions then, Martin?
I think you know who these two are going to be, but I'll keep you guessing for one of them. The guy on the right or the centre of the midfield is Billy Bonds. John Lyle's genius, utter genius at moving him from... He saw something in Bonzo that was beyond he'd seen talent, had done the right back thing, and he was up and down the wing, blah, 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 like a second right winger, like Mikel Antonio was under Slaven Bilic, playing... You got two performances out of the same player. But then he obviously thought he could get more out of Bonzo if he moved him out of defence, so he could be in a position to attack, but also to go down, make crosses. Good crosser of the ball, Billy Bonds. But my goodness me, he had a shot on him. On the volley as well. You know, that when he hit them, they stay hit. There's some lovely goals. Thankfully, even at those days, you only got 3 matches every weekend. When Bonzo was playing, they often used to come to Upton Park because they knew he was good. 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 games.
Yeah, he'll get
one of those buttes. He was a very high-scoring midfield player. He was also a fantastic defender, captain, and guardian of the team. West Ham had a very light, skimpy kind of player, 17-year-old Johnny Aris in the early 70s. And I don't know who we were playing, but somebody put Aris into the chicken run with one of these scything tackles. And You know what's coming next. It was not even 60 seconds. Bonds goes up to him, and I don't know what he did. It looked like the slightest contact, but the guy was out for nearly 2 minutes. Not unconscious, but he was just like,
Damn.
And Bonds was just like, come back. This was Bonds in the early days of midfield and defence. So he looked after his players. And so the poor old opponents, they didn't just have to worry about him. They had to worry about what happened if they cropped any of the West Ham.
Yeah.
You've got two people coming at you. I'm not encouraging thuggery. I mean, he was an elegant thug, if you like. I don't know if he'd like that description, but he was a class player, and actually my favourite West Ham player of all time. And I know a lot of people say Bobby Moore. When I finally had the chance to meet him, and he was there, like where you are, I couldn't talk to him. And Tony Cotty was there at the time, and he said, "Come on, meet him, come and talk to him." I said, "I can't, Tony. I can't. I'm sorry." And he said, "What? I can't talk to him. I can't talk to him." So that is a true story. Okay, so he's such a top bloke. Yeah. I've shaken his hand. I shook his hand, and that was something. I mean, he for me, what a fan.
He's your goat. He's your greatest of all time. Cool.
Just very quickly, everyone will know this is his greatest game, which I think it was the only time I ever went on the South Bank. Bonzo scored a perfect hat-trick. His only hat-trick for West Ham. Left foot, right foot, header. They were the only goals in the game as well. How many players do that in their career? It's like Damian Rice on the last game he played as a teenager against Arsenal, scores the winning goal, 1-0. I've got a picture of him coming off the pitch, and that's one of my favourite pictures. In fact, don't go away.
Oh, we're even getting it. Yeah. Only reason to mine, we're getting a photo. Right. That's all right.
Right, I think it's next door. Here we go.
Here we go. He's coming. Not only do we get Martin thoughts, we get his photo collection as well. It's all part and parcel of the Godleman experience.
Yeah, I've got to. Well, that's just. Sorry, I beg your pardon. You can cut this bit out afterwards. I'm sure you can.
No, we'll keep this in. It's fun. We're raw, we're unedited.
Here he is.
Still fun of games. There he is. God bless him. Yeah, incredible.
Sorry, did I call him Damian? Jeez.
Yeah, I knew you meant that.
I used to have a student called Damian Rice. It's a nightmare. When you've been a teacher, you get the Declan, of course.
Lovely picture.
There he is, and that's him. You can see a little bubble in his just coming up in his face as he's going off the pitch.
Oh, bless him.
That was that game. I will put it back. I'll get in trouble if I don't hang it back in the right place.
So we're finding out all about Martin's household decoration as well.
Sorry.
So don't be silly. Right, so who we got? So we got Bonzi, and who we got else in the centre?
Russ, I know you've got to go out this evening, so I'm apologising at the length of it so far. The other one, of course, is Trevor Brooking, Sir Trevor Brooking. Elegance. His nickname amongst the West Ham lot was Hadley, because Gerald Harper played this very posh. I don't know what he did, whether he was a horse owner or something, but he got into scrapes and all that, and that was the program of the time. So Trev's nickname was Hadley amongst that. I'm not. He didn't care, but and he doesn't actually. He's a very he's a sort of taciturn bloke. He'll talk if you ask him, but he's not an in-your-face man. He's a gentleman, I think you'd say. And of course, caretaker managed West Ham. And if you think that man lacks passion, you don't see him shouting and screaming. You look at him in that game, Manchester City, where we won at Man City 1-0. Canute scored the goal, and he's caretaker manager after what happened to Glenn Roeder. And some of the photos taken of Trevor Brooking in the dugout, really, and this man lives and breathes West Ham. Wonderful and such a gentleman. But he had this ability. He didn't seem to have any pace, and yet he he just walked past players.
Right past them, yeah.
And people often said that him and Alan Devonshire were a perfect pair because they both had this ability to sometimes play the obvious thing, but to know when not to. And he would position his body in a certain way to get to a ball. There's one goal he scores where he's almost lying on the ground when he gets it because he really has to stretch for it. A lot of players would have just let that one go.
Let it go, yeah.
Some great goals and great performances in our Cup Winners' Cup run of 75-76 that got us to the final, where we lost to Anderlecht. But he was absolutely fantastic.
I like it. That's, again, a strong midfield.
Yeah.
Very strong. Right, okay, let's crack on it and go for your goal machines up front, Martin. Who have we got as your two strikers?
Well, this is hard. This is really hard. Because the strikers score the goals, don't they? And without wishing to say something too obvious. And over the years, West Ham have had some great goal scorers. Brian Pop Robson was one of my favourites, who younger kids maybe don't know, but check him out in the early 70s. He had the unluckiest striker for West Ham ever. He left just before we won the FA Cup in 75. He came back, played again in the second thing, and then he left just before we won it in 80. So he missed 2 FA Cup winning season medals, but scored loads and loads of goals and a great goal scorer in the 6-yard box, scored good goals from distance. So I would consider Pop Robson to be unlucky, because I know you said it doesn't necessarily have to be technically. No. It's such a lovely, and again, a lovely man and a nice guy. I'm thinking of the other ones. Tony Cottee. How he didn't make these last 2, I don't know. 146 goals. That's a lot of goals. Will we ever have another player scores that many? He's the last great goal scorer, I would say, for West Ham. There's nobody like him. But he's been beaten by 2 players purely because of that thing that you said about you got to pick somebody who's like your favourite. And these really come up. One with me working for West Ham and one with me as a kid.
Okay.
The first game I went to Upton Park was the game after that Spurs game where West Ham played Chelsea. It was also 2-2. And I saw Jeff Hurst, and for me it was like a film star, like seeing a film star. There he was, and he was just almost in touching distance. And because as a kid, you know,
yeah.
I mean, even when you get an old git like me, it's still special. But
yes.
Jeff Hurst, I mean, this guy scored something that nobody else has done yet. 3 goals in a World Cup final and 6 goals in a league game. And they all say, look, you did it with all different parts of your body. He punched the first one in against Sunderland in 68. He says that, by the way, so I'm not being nasty. A goal scorer. He scored almost 1 goal every other game.
Wow.
And I think he's possibly the last striker who did that. Brian Clough, Jimmy Greaves, great goal scorers. These people are one-offs. And if Brian Clough hadn't broken his leg, he played for Middlesbrough, I think, he would possibly have been the greatest goal scorer of all time. But when you see Greaves, you know that, I mean, Hurst wasn't Jimmy Greaves, a different kind of player. And had this thing when he hit the ball, he puffed his cheeks out. And he's another one like Bobby Moore who didn't really get, I mean, he's getting it now, but he didn't get the accolades and the right comments from people that he should have done. Really a fantastic player, a wonderful player. I remember his penalty kicks, which, as I said, I think earlier, he didn't just hit them straight down the middle. He just hit them as hard as he could. And that was what he said. You say, what's your technique? The semi-final against Stoke, we've won 3-2 at Stoke. And at Upton Park, we think we're in the final. We're going to Wembley. John Ritchie scored a goal for Stoke early in the game. And right towards the end of the game, Harry Redknapp goes down the right, gets fouled, we get a penalty. Well, Hurst puts this in, it's 1-1, we're at Wembley. But who's in goal for Stoke? Gordon Banks. So you've got one of our World Cup winning team taking the penalty, the other one in goal.
Sticks, yeah.
And even young kids will probably be familiar with the Banks save from Pelé in 1970 in the Mexico World Cup. You can see it on YouTube if you haven't seen it already. But this, for me, is every bit as good. Hurst hits the ball as hard as he can hit it, kind of in the middle of the goal, but really with power. And you think this, I don't know if they've got some way of measuring the speed of these things, but he must have hit the ball as powerfully as anyone. Banks somehow not only gets to the ball, because it's one thing to get to it. You see goalies, it goes through them, like Gary Neville calls it the Poppadom hand, which I think is brilliant. But the ball goes through the keeper. But this time, Banks did the same thing he did against Pelé. Because when Pelé heads this ball down, the cross from Jorginho, Banks kind of scoops it up and hits
over the top. Yeah.
He did exactly the same with this Hurst thing. Hurst thing's going down. He gets down and kind of scrambles it. And we were watching. I was behind the goal, so there's no one who knows this better than me.
Yeah.
I was, and you think you wanted to get out of the way. You thought the ball was going to go through the net. And I looked, and there was a sort of silence there at the North Bank. And he said, how did that not go in? He's scooped it out. And the power is such that even as it's gone up, it's gone over the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, normally if you'd hit something like it would go straight, but the power carries with it and it's gone over the bar.
Wow.
And 1-1, Stoke go through to the final and won in 72. I'm talking, I've got a Hurst memory where he didn't score, but of course that guy was scoring every week, almost every other game.
Okay, so Jeff, and who do we have as your last player?
Right. Well, if I could introduce him, if it's possible.
Of course.
I had the pleasure of working on I've got to hope I can get this now. There we go. Of working on a video with him, and I had an interview with him as well. And we wanted to sell his DVD, so we had to put a little advert together, a radio advert, and this was what we did. This was the advert for his video.
Paolo Di Canio, Paolo Di Canio, Paolo Di Canio, out now on video, March 12, 1999, in your video stores. Paolo Di Canio on video. No Italian footballer ever played better in England.
So TT Kamara it is then.
No Italian player ever played better in England. That's what we said in the end. That was the thing. But yeah, Paolo Di Canio, a complete and utter enigma. I don't know if you've seen the videos he's just done in the last couple of weeks, him in his garden.
Yeah.
If anyone doubts how much this guy loved West Ham, then just watch that video. You can't doubt. The guy's still talking about West Ham and singing "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles" and knows all the words.
And the shirt was like a 50s or 60s shirt. It wasn't like one that he played in.
A guy who's interested in the history of the club.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just to see him, the obvious things, the goal against Wimbledon when he's in the air, hits this volley from this cross, this fabulous ball, right almost from the halfway line, crossed by Trevor Sinclair. How does Sinclair not get in this 11? And Di Canio, airborne, like a pirouette, hits this ball. And then what makes it complete is the goal celebration when he's going, what is he doing? What does that mean? No. Is he saying, no one in the universe could have scored a goal as good as that?
Yeah.
Saying, no, I don't even believe I did that myself. Or is he saying, no, don't throw money at me yet, I'll take it afterwards? What does that no mean? You should have a separate program. You get all the people you can. What did he mean when he went, no?
Yeah.
Everyone knows the story of how he came to West Ham. And Harry Redknapp telling the story. I thought I'd take a punt. He was 1.5 million. He'd been worth 11 million or something. And he was on the scrap heap. I don't know, 1.5 million still sounds quite a lot of money for someone on the scrap heap.
Yeah,
but everyone knew he was good. But everyone knew also he pushed down referees. Ian Wright was talking about it recently on a Match of the Day thing where they do talk about great moments.
Yeah.
And he picked that one out at Di Canio. So Di Canio, it's not really what he should be remembered for. That goal has been voted, incidentally, greatest goal in the Premier League so many times.
Yeah.
He scored great. What about that goal at Stamford Bridge?
Yeah.
The first goal. He volleys this ball. He tees himself up like he's playing on a training pitch and hits this ball. And the keeper's like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And he does it again. We get in that game. We are hopeless that season. Can't win at home. We didn't win a game till January. And yet we had these 3 away wins in November 2002. And is that the best West Ham team that should have won the league and they got relegated? You'd have to be a genius to get that team relegated. But he then scores the winner, cutting aside, getting the keeper on the near post, again, doing the obvious thing.
Yeah.
I think he'd try and be clever and curl one in. And won us the game. And that is the game where Ranieri, who's the manager of Chelsea, remember him? The first guy ever to take a team to win the league and get sacked the following season. I'd have put up with relegation rather than sack a guy who did that, quite honestly. Yeah. You know, this is why the game's stupid, run by money. Claudio Ranieri, very few people you'll meet as nice as this guy. Post-match, Chelsea 2, West Ham 3. Chelsea have just lost to one of the worst performing West Ham sides that haven't even got, hardly got a point at home.
Yeah.
And they're saying to Ranieri, so, where did it go wrong? Zola scores this nice free kick. Yeah, no, well, we go. And Ranieri said, look this interview up. He said, there's no time to talk about this game. We should be talking about Paolo Di Canio. Fantastic. Yeah. Can you imagine the manager of the other side talking in that way about someone? Di Canio, his performance on the day was just unbelievable. And again, it was one of the ones, there is actually, if you look for it, don't please, there is a DVD of the whole game, which I commentate on, and I'm afraid it's worth listening to. For some of the worst commentary, because I just lose it. I completely lose it. I'm a fan with a commentator's mic. I'm just going, because he just does these amazing things. And unfortunately, Di Canio fell out with Glenn Roeder. And the other thing about Di Canio is he don't do away games. I don't know why. And Harry Redknapp said afterwards, being interviewed, well, we don't do away games really. And you think, you're the manager, make him do them.
Exactly.
Well, you couldn't make him do anything. You had to leave. And Harry Redknapp was the perfect manager.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All the best out of him. A lot of people don't have a lot of good words to say for Redknapp. I'm not one of them. I'd have Redknapp up there as one of our great managers. He's done a lot of crazy things in his life. But what a fabulous team he put together. And he was the man who brought Di Canio to West Ham. Do not forget that, West Ham fans. When you slag off Mr. Redknapp, he brought Di Canio to us. So he should be respected for that, if nothing else.
Very good.
Sorry.
No, rant over, Martin. Very good. No, okay, that's great. So just to go over the team again, for Godleman 11, he's got Parksy in goal. He's got Lampard Senior at left. He's got Bobby and Alvin in the middle. Ray Stewart on the right. Dev on the left. Brookin and Bonds are 2 Bs in the middle. Frank Jr. on the right. And up front, Jeff and PDC. Sir Jeff and PDC. That is a pretty awesome team. And you could put Cotty on the bench if you're worried about Di Canio not playing.
I did want to say, and I should have said it, although I called him Damian Rice. God, I can imagine people out there going,
who does Damian Rice? He's a singer. He sings Cannonball. Yeah.
What's his name? Declan Rice must also consider himself unlucky not to be in that 11. And it's only because of his youth, and also the fact that some other team are going to drag him away eventually. The only good thing for West Ham about this coronavirus is that Declan Rice is still a West Ham player.
And we haven't lost for over 2 months now. So
it's our best run ever. Yeah, but Tony Cottee absolutely is the 12th man, because we need someone to go play in the away games, which Paolo Di Canio won't be turning out. And Cottee, I've spoken about him as well. The best 6-yard finisher in the Premier League. Alan Shearer said that. And remember, he's still the Premier League top scorer. Yeah, he knows he did an interview on the Tony Cottee DVD, and he was full of admiration for him. So high praise. So if you have any doubt about Tony Cottee, you don't know him, I'm telling you, Alan Shearer, who's a man who can score goals, spoke highly. And of course, he scored all those goals for Frank McAvenny in that fabulous 85-86 season, Russ.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a very strong team, Martin. Very, very good. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Martin. As I said to everyone, Martin's hopefully proved his encyclopedic knowledge of West Ham. I'm sure there's a lot of YouTube searches that's going to happen afterwards with some of these players and some of the stories and some of the goals that you mentioned. Thank you very, very much for your time, Martin. Hopefully we'll see each other soon. Hopefully.
And thank you very much for inviting me on. I've had an absolute pleasure. Ball. Thank you for tolerating my old manism, but all the memories there. 50 years, yeah.
Wow. Impressive stuff. Anyway, thanks everyone. Like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.